Sergio Espana.
Could you repeat that?
Sergio Espana.
Now, Sergio, what's going on today?
Today we've come to the Baltimore Development Corporation Central Office on 36 South Charles Street to demand transparency and accountability. Right now, BDC is working on closed-room deals with Cordish, one of the main developers at the Inner Harbor, to give them a $3 million rent break for superficial renovations to the power plant. We think that it makes no sense to be providing this amount of catering to the developer that has been, involved with documented cases of labor abuses, from going from wage theft to harassment to poverty wages to, in some cases, even just poor wages. And so we've seen this as something that's completely unacceptable for the city to constantly cater to these big developers, saying that somehow that'll trickle over to the Baltimore community. The Inner Harbor has existed for 30 years, and for that amount of time, people that have worked at the Inner Harbor have had to deal with the same situation of being paid less than minimum of what is needed to get by. So that's why we're coming here to demand accountability, because we see it as very, very crucial for not just for the workers in Baltimore, but they have families. They live in Baltimore. They can help grow the community. So much money comes into the Inner Harbor that immediately just works itself back out, and it makes no sense to us. So that's why we're now working with them, workers at the Inner Harbor, on a campaign where we declared a human rights zone in 2009, and we're working on a campaign to get our very, very basic human rights that we need at the Inner Harbor just to get by. And that's access to a living wage as a minimum, and continuing education opportunities, and full health care coverage for workers at the Inner Harbor. And so we think that it's absolutely ridiculous that something that's so crucial to the community is not even being considered. While at the same time, to a billionaire company like Cordish, they're willing to cater to them and give them these $3 million rent breaks. We have workers that have been testifying today that are being evicted from their homes, despite the fact that they're working full-time at the Inner Harbor. Why? Because they simply do not make enough money to get by. So we think that it's incredibly hypocritical for something named the Baltimore Development Corporation to in no way actually be supporting development for the Baltimore community. So that's why we're coming here today, to demand to know why it is that the lack of transparency, why it is that they're not sharing with us how they come to these decisions to make something as enormous as a $3 million rent break without taking into consideration workers' rights and workers' demands. So we've come here to make our demands and our rights heard. I'm representing United Workers. We're a human rights organization started in 2003 by homeless day laborers in Camden Yards. 3 years later, we became the first day laborers in the country to win a living wage. After that, workers came to the Inner Harbor and saw very, very similar conditions. Folks not being, having their economic human rights respected, not having access to a living wage, healthcare coverage, and education. So we declared a human rights zone in 2009, and we've been working with workers at the Inner Harbor, from the pavilions, the power plant, etc., working on this campaign where we're organizing workers across restaurants for access to education, full healthcare coverage, and as a minimum, a living wage.
Thanks so much.
When do we want it?
Multi-millionaire company need a break when they are paying $1,000 in rent per year, plus some percentage for the profit that they are making. So that is not fair. And we are here today to say this is enough to subsidize these companies, these big companies, when workers need a living wage, when workers need the right to healthcare, right to education, and we need fair development. That's what we need. That's why we're here today at the BDC offices. And also, the other thing is that the BDC and Cordish, all the meetings that they had was behind closed doors, and even the media wasn't allowed to be there. So how is that possible that we don't know how they are using the public space that is the Inner Harbor, which is subsidized with public money? Public resources should be used in a better way. Public resources should be used for public benefits. So thanks everyone for being here today, and we are crossing the street, and we are having a protest there for a while, because here is where the BDC, the Baltimore Development Corporation offices are, at the suite 1600.
What's your name again, please?
Oh, sorry. My name is Luis Larin, Luis Larin.
And your position with the group?
I'm a leadership organizer with United Workers. Thank you.
Now! When do we want? Now! When do we want? Now! When do we want? Now! What do we want?
The sweat of workers. Workers who are not receiving living wage, workers who doesn't have work with dignity, workers who doesn't have right to healthcare or right to education. So we are delivering this letter and saying, BDC, We want transparency. That's all that we are asking for. And we want fair development. Thank you. At the Inner Harbor, he experimented how this big corporation doesn't care about workers, doesn't care when workers are making the profit that they have. So, Emmanuel, can you share a little bit your experience with working at the Inner Harbor?
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Emmanuel McCrae. I definitely one of the people who experience what it's like to be a low-wage worker dealing with being employed in the harbor. I was once the employee that worked at ESPN Zone, which was owned by Disney downtown in the harbor, was shut down last June very abruptly. I mean, it was for me personally, it was a tough situation and all that, being a worker, working downtown in the harbor and all, in the middle of June when most jobs, being a host, is locked down with the other restaurants. So it's pretty much tough. I got a family raise. I still had to work, make extra ends meet as working other employment, being a DJ just to keep it going and all. So it's very tough and all that, and I'm just here today that no one had to go through a situation like myself. There's people out there worse than me. I seen fellow co-workers and my job became homeless. I seen other restaurants that got shut down really run the same issue. So it motivated me a lot, whatever and all that, to speak out. Because far as I'm concerned, at the end of the day, what these people up top are doing with the developers is ignorance on fire outperforms knowledge on ice. So now, if I get the opportunity to speak, if nobody want to object to it or don't want to believe what I'm going to say, that considers stupidity, because I'm one of many living proof of people who live in the harbor that have suffered the pains of they just want to shut down, don't care. I mean, I'm not this money that they're going to give to, that's public money. That's all I got to say, So I pay tax dollars just like everybody else, and he waxing for a lot of money. Just for example and all that, if I want to paint my walls in my house or home and all, I'm not going to get a break from my landlord, but the person asking for $3 million and rent, from these people and all that, come on, that's ludicrous right here. And they want to kick out the media because they don't want nobody to know behind the closed doors. See, I'm here, to wise people up and all that, because I'm learning as I go every day. And that's pretty much my story.